So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Kia Eliscurity. I am the project facilitator for the Cannabis and Mental Health Project. I am located on the territory of the Coast Salish Nations. So today is a webinar on effective cannabis education, an example of an evidence-based youth-led partnership project. This webinar is co-hosted by the Schizophrenia Society of Canada, Cannabis and Psychosis, YouthREX, and the Mental Health Commission of Canada. So the agenda for today, we'll start off with a few of the learning objectives for the webinar, and then we'll have some of our Youth Action Committee members present a land acknowledgement. We'll hear from our two scientific advisors, Dr. Yerisa Herman and Dr. Phil Thibault, and we'll have others, Youth Action and Mental Health Commission of Canada, introduce themselves. We'll have Melisha, another Youth Action Committee member, take us through the Cannabis and Mental Health course. And then we'll have other Youth Action Committee members explore the mentor guide and a few of the activities within. And then we'll open it up to a general discussion and Q&A period. So throughout this webinar, if you're feeling inspired, if you see at the bottom of the Zoom app there, right beside record, there's a Q&A feature. So throughout the webinar, ask any questions that might pique your interest, and there's a feature where you can upvote other people's questions that you'd like answered. Thank you. I would also like to add that there are some French-speaking folks on our team. So if you are French-speaking, feel free to ask those questions in French, and there's someone available to answer them. So today's learning objectives. In this webinar, participants will understand the importance of approaching mental health and cannabis use education through the broader lens of mental and substance use health, as well as social context. Understand the role that key partnerships play in the project's success, including youth with lived experience, youth allies, and organizations that support meaningful collaboration. We'll also gain tools and resources to promote self-efficacy and community wellness, focusing on risk and protective factors on an individual and societal level. And then we'll also learn strategies to effectively implement the resources across a range of different settings to promote awareness and increase self-efficacy.
Ani Bojo, thank you for joining us today. Ninkins Indigenous Oki Kendan Donjaba, Benishin Dondem and Ishnabanendao. My name is Connor Lafortune. I am one of the Yak members that speak French, so feel free to ask them in French, and I'll be happy to answer. We made a beautiful land acknowledgement video here, but I do want to speak a little bit on the importance of that action. I'm from a small First Nation community in northeastern Ontario by the beautiful water, and we did base ourselves off of that landscape to use some of the pictures here that you'll see. A land acknowledgement is really something that we have started doing in the past, I would say 5 years more actively, and it's something that's very important in order to acknowledge the territories, the people, and our history, the history and the stories of this land. We tend to want land acknowledgements to come with actions and real actions, concrete actions that go forth. And throughout this project, we have been able to support different Indigenous people, myself namely, and some other communities where there have been active engagement with Indigenous communities. And therefore, that is why we have shown this beautiful video. So I hope you enjoy it.
A land acknowledgement is a formal territorial acknowledgement through which we recognize the Indigenous peoples of Canada as the original custodians of the lands on Turtle Island, which was appropriated by European settlers during colonization. We must understand that there is no one right way to acknowledge the land. However, it is our responsibility to understand our positionality and privilege as settlers to become better allies.
Ani Bojo, Nimkins Indigenous Oki Kendan Donjaba, Benishin Dondem Anishnabanenendao. My name is Connor Little Thunder Spirit Lafortune. I'm from Dukis First Nation and I am part of the Bird Clan. As an Indigenous person, I have an inherent responsibility to honor and respect the earth. I understand that due to the nature of this national project, we are not all on the same territories. I therefore acknowledge that the lands upon which we all reside and benefit from are called Turtle Island, where hundreds of nations, customs, languages, and practices live. I acknowledge and honor Shkogmakwe, Aki, Nebe, Shkode, Awisin, and Anikobjigan. These lands have been utilized and taken care of for millennia. I acknowledge and thank all of those who have worked these lands and continue to do so in order to give me a place to reside, work, and receive schooling. I acknowledge my responsibility as a tribal and treaty member on these territories, and the responsibility of all of my relation. I acknowledge my non-Indigenous brothers, sisters, and siblings who have found their home on these sacred lands. I follow the intents stated in the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Treaty of Niagara to share these lands and collectively play our part in caring for her. Miigwech.
A land acknowledgement is the first step. As settlers on this land, we are all treaty signers and occupiers of unceded territories, who often benefit to this day from the structures and practices of colonialism, and are therefore responsible and accountable for the violence that Indigenous people face. Allyship is a continuous process, one you earn from the communities you stand in solidarity with through your actions and commitment. We can recommit to being better allies through continuous efforts in the Truths to Reconciliation process of the Indigenous people's history. And we can stand in solidarity with them, which would begin by listening to the various Indigenous voices and their efforts in indigenizing their lands, communities, and history.
It'll all come to you via email, so you can easily click on some of these links. You can easily pass it along to the right people on your vestry or stewardship committee if that's what needs to happen too. So that's why it's super.
Sarah, we lost your sound.
Thank you for that, Connor. So that video was made in collaboration with our two Youth Action Committee members, Connor Lafortune and Melisha, who you'll hear from later in the presentation. So this webinar has an array of different presenters. I've already introduced myself, but you'll be hearing from Melisha, Connor again, Hargan, and Ashani, all Youth Action Committee members with Cannabis and Psychosis. And then you'll hear from a youth member from YouthREX, Katarina. You'll be hearing from Julia Armstrong from the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and our two scientific advisors, Dr. Phil Thibault and Dr. Urissa Herman. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Phil Thibault.
Great, thanks so much, Kia, and welcome everybody. I'm actually been really intrigued watching everybody putting in where they're from in the chat box, and it's so great to see everybody joining from across Canada in all different phases and places and work environments and students. So really great to see. So I've been very privileged to be one of the scientific advisors on this project. And I know I'm here to give a few words, but I also see myself as kind of getting in the way of you seeing and hearing more about this project. So I'm not going to say too much. I was asked to speak on a few of these bullet points here, which, really could take on a whole day workshop in each one of these bullet points. I do want to say, as a researcher, I'm a psychiatrist and a researcher as well, that the one great thing from my perspective that around legalization is that now that has allowed us in our Canadian context to have more research around cannabis use and its effects. Both, around the areas of harm and risk, but as well as any potential beneficial effects as well. And a good example is we've seen a lot more monies come into research in this area. One of our partners on this project, the Mental Health Commission of Canada, has really been instrumental in stewarding some of this research as well. And just keep in mind when we talk about cannabis research, it's a huge field because cannabis itself has over 100 active constituents in it. So, you know, most of us know about THC and with cannabidiol, but there's a number of other active constituents in cannabis itself. So there's a lot of areas for research, again, in understanding risks and harms as well as potential benefits. So latest research around cannabis and mental health, I mean, all to say, you know, there's been great work looking at harms and risks. Not as much work perhaps in looking at any potential benefits. And, you know, even from our group, we've looked at systematic reviews. We've developed and written systematic reviews and meta-analysis, not showing really a lot of necessarily potential benefits, but this is very early stages of research. We need a lot more to do. On the harm side of things, and one thing you'll hear through this project as well is that potential relationship between cannabis use and psychosis development. You know, a lot of the research sort of distilled down to kind of three main areas, and that's around that age of regular use, the frequency of use, and the potency of product, right? Three main things to consider. So, you know, we say that, you know, uh, where the harms will come about is that daily or almost daily use in adolescence with high THC product. That's where we see some potential negative mental health outcomes. And then this also flips into, you know, well, then what are effective interventions? And a part of that is this product itself. And, you know, education is such an important part for our youth and young adults to have the information they need to make their choices. I also get asked, you know, what's the difference between, you know, cannabis-induced psychosis and schizophrenia? And I will say, you know, sometimes it is difficult at the beginning to really differentiate that. And sometimes cannabis-induced psychosis can lead to schizophrenia in itself. One sort of general line that I mentioned to everybody that I see is, you know, cannabis is supposed to be a pleasurable experience if you're using, right? If it's not a pleasurable experience, maybe then there are some individual risk factors for you that would put you at risk, right? So again, information and things to consider when looking at consumption. So I think with that, I'm going to leave it there. Again, a lot of good research is occurring. We still need a lot more research, and it's nice to see sort of research backbone, of course, to projects like this as well. But congratulations to our youth and young adults who have led this project and developed it, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy it. So thank you.
Over to me then. I echo Phil's statement around how exciting this is, how great it is to see everybody here. I'm also going to keep it short because I don't want to take away from the work today. And similarly, each of these points I could talk to for days, really, but I'll keep it brief. So in terms of effectively working with young people, one of the key points I would say is meeting people where they're at. So there's different phases to change processes, and we want to meet someone where they're at in regards to that change process. So for example, if somebody's, you know, maybe ambivalent about making change or not wanting to make change to their use, but they're open to exploring their use, to talking about their use, then that's just what we want to do. We want to provide space to explore, to understand one's use, maybe to build insight into the relationship between one's use and one's mental health. We don't want to jump ahead to change plans or action plans when somebody's not there. So really just meeting them where they're at and what they're ready for. If somebody is ready to make change, wanting to make change, so maybe they have a change goal around controlling their use better or only using in certain environments, then we might start to build some skill in helping to achieve those goals. That work might look at, you know, awareness of one's triggers, strategies for coping with triggers, We might do some work around changing our relationship to our urges to use so that we have more control. Assertiveness training, so how do we talk to our loved ones about the changes we want to make? And another, big bucket that I think we might often miss is around targeting the underlying factors that are perpetuating variables to one's use. So what I mean by that is that, it's really important to acknowledge that nobody uses for no reason. And if somebody is using to help cope with mental health difficulties, so for example, if somebody's using cannabis to cope with their anxiety, then as a clinician, we want to provide targeted treatment for that anxiety so that somebody has the coping strategies to cope with that anxiety and they might not need cannabis in the same way. So really all that to say is that there's different almost buckets of interventions, and it's really about where somebody's at in terms of how and if we provide certain interventions. Approach, how approaching these conversations is really about not telling people what to do. We don't, that creates barriers. When we tell people, when we provide information about risks and harm and somebody's not ready to hear that, what it can do is really just create barriers to treatment. And so we really never want to tell somebody but what to do. We want to understand who they are as a person, what makes them tick, what are their goals, what are their values, and then explore the relationship between those things and their substance use. So for example, if my goal is to go back to school, then I might want to explore, how does cannabis work for me in that way? Does it help me achieve that goal? And in what ways might it interfere? And then finally, just before I hand it over, around integrated care. So integrated care means treating mental health difficulties and substance use within the same program. This is key in terms of best practice, and evidence tells us that substance use and mental health are not separate things. And if we think about the example that I just provided, somebody might be using cannabis to cope with their voices that they hear. If we have an addiction service that has no experience with psychosis, the addiction service might not accept that person into their program. And similarly, a mental health service might not accept certain people into their program if they're using substances. And what that means is that people fall between the cracks and they don't get the treatment that they need. And so really what we want to do is provide services and centers that treat mental health and substance use concurrently. Also why this project is so incredibly important. I'll stop talking. I'm going to remain on the line. So if there's questions at the end, I'd be very happy to answer them, and just super happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yorsa Herman, and thank you, Dr. Phil Thibault. I think the piece on meeting people where they're at is exactly where Cannabis and Psychosis roots ourselves, and the Cannabis and Mental Health Project also grounds itself. Totally, we don't want to be telling young folks what to do. We would just want to provide them with the right information and, really empowering them to make informed decisions that's for their own benefit. So to give folks a little history of the project, so Cannabis and Psychosis is a project that was created within the Schizophrenia Society of Canada. It was funded through the Substance Use and Addictions Program on a 3-year grant. And Cannabis and Psychosis really is powered by young people. We have, as I've mentioned throughout this webinar, we have a team that fluctuates between 12 and 14, a team of Youth Action Committee members that really advise and drive initiatives within the project. We have a series called Ask the Experts, where we invite clinicians, young people with lived experience, politicians, people that grow cannabis, really just like a plethora of different individuals to talk about their expertise for an hour, and then there's a live discussion after. And all of those discussions are facilitated by young people on our team. We also have weekly research roundups where we take research articles, newly emerging research articles about cannabis and mental health, And we synthesize the information to make it more accessible for young folks, and we publish that on our social media. Really invite you to check out our website in general. There's a lot of different projects that have come into fruition over the past 3 years, but really want to emphasize that Cannabis and Psychosis is really driven by young people, advised by young folks, and is targeted for young folks as well. And so the Cannabis and Mental Health Project. So it was within the second year of the Cannabis and Psychosis Project, where young folks on the team were talking about, you know, like we currently have a website, we have these initiatives, but how do we mobilize this information to really get into the hands of young people across the country? So initially, prior to COVID, we had planned on doing a national transit campaign where we'd have posters and infographics in bus stops, train stations. But then of course, we call it our Pivot 2020. Things didn't really turn out that way. Folks weren't traveling. So then we went back to the drawing boards and really started thinking, okay, we want young folks, especially, you know, post legalization, to get the information they need and want around cannabis and mental health. So that's where the Cannabis and Mental Health Project was born. There's 2 parts to the project. The first part is the Cannabis and Mental Health course. This is a 90-minute course. It has 4 modules for young folks, for them to explore different aspects of the project, of cannabis and mental health. And then we also have the mentor guide as well, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And I'll continue on to our partnership. So I'll pass it on to Julia.
Hi, folks. My name is Julia Armstrong, and I have the privilege of managing the mental health and substance use team at the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And I just wanted to hum a few bars of how the Commission came to be involved in this work, why we entered this partnership, how we ended up here today. Ultimately, we've been really privileged to partner with the Cannabis and Psychosis Project and YouthREX on this initiative. Back in 2018, the Mental Health Commission of Canada received funding from Health Canada's Substance Use and Addictions Program to explore the relationship between cannabis and mental health for people in Canada. And a big portion of this work included investing in research, but we've also been working to address some of the gaps in knowledge mobilization. So really helping to make sure that knowledge gets into the hands of the people who need it and can use it. And like Dr. Thibault said, also really trying to help make sure that the resources out there present balanced messaging when it comes to the potential impacts of cannabis use on mental health. So not just the negatives, but balanced with the positives. And this Cannabis and Mental Health Project has been a really great opportunity to do just that. The resources that you're going to hear all about today offer an evidence-based and really engaging curriculum that addresses that relationship between cannabis and mental health and explores a range of related issues that are really relevant to youth. And I won't say any more about that because you're going to hear about all those cool features soon. I did just want to acknowledge that for me personally, one of my favorite things about this project is that it's been entirely driven by young people. It's been a real pleasure for the Commission to be able to share our resources through a partnership that we know will have a really great impact. So ultimately, we're just so very grateful to be involved in this work. And with that, I'm going to punt it over to Katarina, who's going to speak on behalf of the fabulous team that we partnered with at YouthREX. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So if you're not familiar with YouthREX or Youth Research and Evaluation Exchange, we are a provincial project based at the School of Social Work at York University. We make research evidence and evaluation practices accessible and relevant to Ontario's grassroots youth sector. We do this through knowledge exchange, capacity building, and evaluation leadership. So in 2019, in the aftermath of cannabis legalization, YouthREX actually launched this certificate, Cannabis and Youth, a certificate for youth workers. This is a self-guided online professional development certificate that provides youth workers with evidence-based information on the health, social, and legal impacts associated with cannabis use. We got great feedback on the certificate, and we know that it fulfilled a need for youth allies, but we know it didn't speak directly to youth. And we knew this in part because we conducted co-design sessions with young people and we heard some great questions. So when the opportunity came up to partner with Cannabis and Psychosis on a certificate specifically for young people, we were really eager collaborators. So like the certificate that we developed for youth workers, Cannabis and Mental Health is informed by youth voice and lived experience, as well as harm reduction and anti-oppressive practice. So what do we mean by harm reduction? I think we touched on this a little bit already, but this is an evidence-based approach that has been shown to minimize the health, social, and legal impacts associated with substance use. It aims to provide young people with balanced information to make their own decisions. So that includes both the benefits and harms of substance use. It also aims to provide them with the tools to reduce harms if they do choose to use substances. This approach is non-judgmental, and as Dr. Yurisa Herman mentioned earlier, it meets people where they're at. This is really in contrast with prevention-oriented approaches, which some of us may have grown up with, that focus exclusively on the harms of substance use. At YouthREX, anti-oppressive practice informs all of our work, so it's really important for us that this was reflected in the certificate. This is an approach that recognizes intersecting systems of oppression and attempts to mitigate their effects on communities experiencing marginalization. It promotes critical reflection and critical consciousness. So in the context of cannabis education, this means recognizing that young people are really differently impacted based on their intersecting identities. We really found that there was like a lack of youth-friendly resources that approach cannabis education from this critical perspective. And we know it's really important to both recognize and address the racist history of cannabis criminalization in Canada. So we know that Black and Indigenous youth are more likely to be targeted by law enforcement. And this actually, unfortunately, remains relevant in the aftermath of legalization, given that cannabis laws affecting youth have, in many cases, become more strict and carry heavier consequences. So we've actually heard from youth workers that they often instruct young people to carry way less than the legal amount, especially in over-policed communities where they're more likely to be stopped. So that's a little bit about the frameworks. Now we're gonna take a look at the course.
Awesome, thank you so much, Katerina. Yeah, so to jump into the course, the Cannabis and Mental Health project in its entirety has three main learning objectives. So it's to promote balanced conversations about cannabis use in relation to youth mental health. And we do this by demystifying and destigmatizing topics pertaining to cannabis and mental health, engaging youth directly in creating effective education and outreach approaches, and considering the specific needs of youth who may be at higher risk of experiencing harms from cannabis use. And that was really a big part of the project. So as we pivoted, Pivot 2020, we really wanted the course and just cannabis and mental health education and topics around it to be targeted to youth who might not feel represented by the mental health field or feel seen in substance use education initiatives. So we really wanted to do outreach and engage young folks that are Black, Indigenous, and youth of color, queer youth, and marginalized youth in general, as well as youth in rural areas. So that was really a big part as to why we wanted this to be an online course, and it's also free. So really just reducing those barriers to make it more accessible. And I'll pass it on to Melisha, who will present the course.
Hey. So just if we can go to the next slide, I can kind of give a brief overview of the mods. So as you can see, like this course, it's composed of 4 main modules, each with a distinguished topic. And for mod 1, is called the basics. And what we do in this module is we really dive deep into what mental health is. not just in terms of like a clinical context or like the medical context that we might be familiar with, but also kind of diving deep and seeing it in the perspective of youth, as this course is by youth for youth. Next, we go into module 2, where it's called the Exploring the Link. And here we're digging deeper into cannabis use and mental health, how they connect with each other, how they, the relationship with each other, and how that reflects on with youth and in our communities. And that kind of segues into module 3, where we are focusing more on our communities and the legal and social implications of cannabis in terms of its legalization, the historical legacy, and what it means today in the current context. And lastly, we have module 4, which is putting it into practice, which is more of an application module where we really explore finding tools and resources of practicality for youth and others who are in a youth social circle in the context of cannabis and mental health. So I'm going to begin to share my screen. I do warn that sometimes if I'm sharing a video that the audio might be low. So I just wanted to let everyone know about that. Okay. So this is the main dashboard of when you click on the link for the course. And as you can see right now, on my screen, you can see the Cannabis and Mental Health course and the progress bar. So we're just going to dive deep into it and do a quick overview of what the modules look like, the topics that are included in each module, and a little snippet, little teasers of some of my favorite components in each module. So we're going to go into, as you can see, in module 1, this is the basics. Sorry, it might take some time for it to load. And as you can see on the side, you have this kind of dashboard of showing all the different topics, a progress bar of how much you've completed. And as I was mentioning in the basics, in the screen, what you're looking at right now, this is one of our teens who is kind of sharing their experience on what mental health means to them. And this is what I meant by in this module, where oftentimes we do know what mental health is. And sometimes when we ask ourselves, what does mental health means to you? I remember when we were talking with our teens creating this video, it was something that took everyone a second to kind of reflect. And that's kind of the goal with this module, is for youth to reflect on what mental health means to them personally, individually, and kind of what do they know already of mental health. And in these modules, we explore the youth's perspective. So we had teens across Canada describe their mental health. And then we also have more of what mental health is, explaining what the experiences are in a more definitive stance, so giving the proper definitions that we may be familiar with. So in this module, I'll play a little bit of what this video will entail, which kind of talks about the definition that the WHO is usually familiar with and what we've kind of heard in educational and public contexts.
Mental health comes up a lot these days in different ways and contexts. But what does it mean? And is it negative or is it positive? Mental health refers to our psychological, emotional, and social well-being. In the simplest of terms, being mentally healthy means balance. It means your mind is free and flexible enough to enjoy the good things in life and manage or overcome the not so good things.
So that's just a snippet of the video. And before I kind of end talking about module 1, I just kind of wanted to touch base that we also talk about substance use health and kind of introduced how how substance use influences our mental health. And as you can see in each model, we always have our references and resources for youth. And in this context, we do have a PDF. So you'll see throughout the course in certain sections that will have a PDF summary of some of the content that was viewed, which will be a great tool for youth to just have a summary snapshot of what they've learned. So I'll quickly show what that looks like, just so you have some context. So here we're talking about substance use health, and it really talks about like and highlights what substance use means. And so here we say substance use is deeply embedded in the fabric of many societies. Many of us use drugs to celebrate success or to help us deal with grief, pain, and sadness. We use drugs to mark rites of passage and to pursue spiritual insight. We use drugs to get going and to unwind, aids in daily life. And each one of us has our own unique relationship with substances, which can change throughout our lives. So as we mentioned before, we really do have the approach, a non-judgmental approach in terms of substance use and mental health use. And it's as we kind of lay it out in our language. And this is just a brief overview of kind of like the PDF, kind of highlights some of the most common reasons we use drugs, especially for youth or anyone in general. So here we're highlighting pleasure, curiosity, performance, relief, and social interaction. All right, so I'm going to go into module 2. And as I mentioned, this is more talking about exploring the link. So exploring the link between cannabis and mental health. So in module 1, we talked about more separately in what mental health is overall. And here we're bridging that gap and seeing how they connect. So we first start off by talking about identifying what cannabis is. And in this context, we're talking about what cannabis is in terms of what it is physically, what it's used for, the effects. And as you can see, we have different videos that kind of explain the different contexts of what cannabis is. So we do have, so this is more in the overall sense in terms of how it affects the human body. This is for anyone who really loves the scientific aspect of learning about cannabis. So we have one of our Youth Action Committee members who helped us in this project talk a little bit more about the molecular biology of cannabis. So for folks who really want to know about, like, sometimes we have these terms always thrown around when we're talking about cannabis, like what is THC, what is the endocannabinoid system? So in these modules, you get the opportunity to really understand those definitions and have a tool to know, how its effects on its mind and its body as well. So one of my favorites portion of this module is that, as we mentioned, that this is an entirely youth-led project, and some of the perspectives that are included in this module are from youth who have had lived experience using cannabis and them reflecting on what their relationship with mental health. So I'm going to share a little snippet of this. This is one of our These are two of our youth who have had their personal experiences in high school, and in this video they kind of delve deep into their experience as a stoner and kind of exploring what that label meant for them.
That was who I was. Like I was a stoner.
I was a stoner,
right?
Yeah. Same.
So it's like once I invest. Engaged in school, I couldn't be engaged in sports. I couldn't like have friends outside the circle. I was a stoner. Like that was the top priority. Yeah.
And at first, I think whenever I got.
Oh, my apologies. I think the dialogue wasn't working before, but I'll give a quick snapshot of what they kind of briefly said. As I mentioned, is they're talking about their identities and their lived experience using cannabis and how that affects their mental health and how it was. And so I do really encourage folks when you're reviewing the course to definitely have a look at this video. And below, we also have the full length videos of this entire experience. All right. And another part of this module is a bit more bigger than the previous one we saw. And part of the reason is because it really dissects some of the common questions that youth might have and people might have in terms of the relationship with cannabis and mental health. So we explore, is cannabis bad for young people's mental health, which has been a question that a lot of folks, not just youth, but parents and teachers have thought about, especially when cannabis is becoming integrated in our society. And we also touched more on what psychosis is and the relationship of psychosis and cannabis and schizophrenia. And another common question that folks may be curious about is, can you become addicted to cannabis? So in this module, we really explore what addiction means and the different perspectives on cannabis and addiction and the different realities. So now I'm going to talk about Module 3. And this is talking about the legal and social issues of cannabis. So in this module, we kind of talk about the history of cannabis legalization, when it was criminalized and what that meant for society, for youth, and for marginalized individuals who were caught in these certain legislative policies. And some of the experts, so right now you're on the screen, you see Professor Dr. Wusu Bempe, and we also have the full interview available in our links below. And here in this specific video is a panel of diverse young youth speaking with the professor and kind of dissecting and talking about the racism and injustice. All right. So this is a little bit of some screenshots of what the other videos look like. So this is cannabis legalization. So in the screenshot, it was a direct screenshot of like the Globe and Mail talking about, you know, about marijuana laws. And something that, because this course is in a Canadian context and we use a lot of Canadian perspectives, we really dive onto topics like the war on drugs, which we normally always are familiar hearing in a UX context, hearing in the Canadian context, and the history of the war on drugs and what it means to different societies and different populations and the continued effects it has today. So a very comprehensive, holistic view of what the process of legalization and criminalization of cannabis means to Canada. And another cool part about this module is because it's a lot of information that you know, youth may not have been familiar with, and maybe this is the first time that they are viewing this knowledge. We do have exercises like the quizzes, which help for youth to self-reflect, to do a little check-in on what they just learned. And of course, as we've seen in each module, in the end, there's always a reflection piece for youth to reflect on what they've learned. And here we're talking about what are some ways youth can help other youth avoid criminalization and other harms. And last, we were on to module 4. So putting it into practice. So this is where I was talking about, it's kind of a toolkit, tying all of the knowledge that we learned about cannabis and mental health and talking about the realities of different perspectives in terms of like youth who do use it, youth who don't use it, parents or caretakers who are connected with youth who may use it or may not use it. And so it's really focused on harm reduction, and we're talking about anti-oppressive practices. And here we kind of explain how harm reduction should be used in the context of cannabis and with youth and mental health. And in this slide that you see over here, it says everyone's relationship with cannabis is different. And so that really is highlighted in this module, talking about the different tools that each person who may or may not know a youth who use cannabis, there's a tool for everyone. And I'll quickly kind of talk about some of what they are. So this is a video talking about the risks for underage youth in terms of cannabis, in terms of their health, what that means, or even legally, and the social implications that it might have. And throughout our course, we also really emphasize on balance. And so in this module is talking about finding your balance, your individual balance from people who use cannabis and different cultures, and different perspectives are embedded in these videos. And something that's also like a tool that we've included in this module, which I really like, is one of our Youth Action Committee members named Leaf. This is a mindful meditation video that leads youth in a mindful meditation exercise. So this is what I was mentioning in terms of this module, not only kind of touches on harm reduction, but also provides the tools for youth to practice harm reduction and positive mental well-being and promoting balance. And I just wanted to end off. So this is the basic overview of the course. And of course, I think the videos have a lot of depth to them, a lot of useful information. And like I mentioned before, like specific modules always have a resource and summary sheet. So the layout of this model is really accommodating to different learning styles for different contexts. If people want to focus on specific topics in terms of cannabis and mental health. And yeah, thank you for going through the course with me.
Thank you so much, Melisha. I also saw in the chat that someone asked, will this be available in French? So yes, the Cannabis and Mental Health Project, the course, as well as the mentor guide, is fully translated and available in French. The videos have closed captioning below, but yeah, everything is available in French, and all these resources here today are also free. So next up, we'll be talking about the mentor guide.
Hi, folks. My name is Ishani, and I'll be briefly discussing the purpose of the mentor guide and navigating through the website landing page. So this is the landing page for the Cannabis and Mental Health Mentor Guide page. I'll just sorry. Could you go up, Sarah? Thank you. So I'll start at the top. There's an option to view the course in English or French. There's also a use guide button, which allows you to navigate through the mentor guide legend, which we will further be exploring later, and the mentor guide map. We also have various resources if you wanted to click on that quickly. Right at the top. Oh. Perfect. So there's a list of national and regional resources, and they are further categorized between whether it's a mental health resource or cannabis resource. And then scrolling back to the top, there's also a glossary. which provides quick and easy to understand definition on the terms that are discussed within the course and the mentor guide. So we can just go back to the homepage of the mentor guide now. Perfect, thank you. So scrolling down, there's an introduction which provides information on the purpose of the guide, why it was made, who can use it, how it works, and the evidence behind its effectiveness. So I'll just briefly provide the purpose of the mentor guide and how it came to be. Through developing and beta testing the Cannabis and Mental Health course, we realized that we needed to view younger youth, those under 19, as a separate, distinct key target audience. So we developed the mentor guide to reach youth who may be of pre-legal age, because we know that young people between the ages of 13 to 18 are making key decisions about how cannabis fits into their life. So scrolling further down, there's a lovely introductory video where Connor takes us through how to navigate the mentor guide and its content based on what your needs are. Then there is the beautiful land acknowledgement video that we saw at the beginning of the webinar, and the option to download a PDF of the transcript. The PDF also contains some great allyship resources and Indigenous resources at the bottom. But yeah, I'll now pass it on to Hargan to take us through the mentor guide map.
Thanks so much, Ishani. And I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking briefly about the mentor guide map, as well as the different activities that we have that can be used. So when you go into the mentor guide essentially has a range of different activities that can be used by youth mentors, or it can be used by those who support youth in different contexts. So teachers, peer support, and youth workers, as well as parents. Each activity that we have here is focused on a hook that basically encourages reflection, conversation, and creative expression. We'll be going through one of these activities later, but just briefly, all the hooks. Oh, sorry, I'll slow. All the hooks are different types of items. So, for example, we have a story, we have a poem, we have a song, a game, or short videos. And essentially, they explore themes that are important for youth and important to promoting the idea of mental and substance use health. Some examples of themes that we have are focused on balance and change, stress and resilience, identity and influences, problem solving, and helping yourself and others. And so we have quite a few different activities here, but just given the time, I'm going to pass it off to Connor, who's going to run us through one activity and just give you a sense of what the mentor guide looks like and how you can use this in your daily work with other youth. So I'll pass it off to Connor to run us through one activity.
Thank you. Just being very considerate of the time. We're not going to run through a full activity, but we will be talking about the activities just because we really want to hear from you and the questions that you might have. If we look at, I think it's called Take Your Time or Take a Breath. I forget the exact name of it. Perfect. So all of the activities are a little different, and they do speak to a different need that you might have when it comes to learning or breathing. Or for this one, take a minute. We go through the video of a wonderful song, and then there are some questions and reflections that go along with it. And of course, every time we have the activity, there are very clear steps on how to do it, and there's a handout that is provided at the end, so you can either do it for yourself, do it for a group, or really just, check them out without doing them at all. But here you see that you listen to the song, and then there are reflective questions that go along with the lyrics. And it's really to get you thinking, to get you to take a breath, and to really focus on what you've been learning so far and what you can learn with this course. So like I said, many of the activities are very, very different in nature. However, they do all go back to the same goal of learning and sharing and just really creating a better environment around mental health, around cannabis, and certainly around youth and all of those things. So I do not want to take too much time because I really want to hear from all of you, but I do encourage all of you to take the time and look at some of the activities. The video that is presented to explain how to navigate that whole system is very clear, and I really hope you all enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Connor. Yeah, to echo what Connor says, after the webinar or during, please take your time, explore the activities. Some you can do alone, some you can do with friends, at a party, who knows, different contexts, but they're really, really fun. So yeah, we'll open it up to you folks, if you'd like to ask any questions, to whether it's to Dr. Urisa Herman, or to any of the youth on the team as well. I saw someone's question before, but I think it got removed. It was wondering if we consulted any other youth in the development of the course. So we worked with a couple youth from YouthREX, Chantel Phillips, who couldn't be with us today, as well as Katarina, were really instrumental in the development of the course, as well as our Youth Action Committee. But through our first beta period of the course, we created a National Teen Advisory Committee group, and that was comprised of 12 teens between the ages of 16 to 19 across Canada. And they spent time going through the course, giving us feedback on the visual elements, so how the website looked, how the back end e-learning platform, Thinkific, how that felt as a user and as a young person, just to really ensure that, you know, the content was resonating with folks, but also how you interacted with the content felt good. We wanted to really make sure that we weren't, as I've said before, telling folks what to do, but giving them opportunity to reflect on their own mental health and their own relationship with substances, and their cannabis curiosity in general. We talk briefly about vaping, but we don't go into a lot of detail. I do know that there's other cannabis education projects. I believe there's one out of CCSA that is developing content around the potential harms with cannabis and vaping. Yeah, so I don't know if other folks would want to answer this question, but I see one that says, do you feel that this course could be integrated to a grade 9 class? Was it created to be presented in a school setting? Maybe Melisha, would you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I can definitely speak on this. So when we were taking the approach of creating this course, of course we had a very broad age group that we were kind of hoping that this course would be applied to. So from the age of 14 up until 25-ish. And so especially for a grade 9 class, I think especially some of the modules, we're also creating a teacher guide as well, which can be used in aid with the course, so that teachers, if you're a grade 9 teacher or educators in any grade, you can pick and choose the different topics you want to address. And of course, this youth, the course that I went over particularly was kind of a self-led course, and of course teachers can go through it with their youth as well and pick and choose certain modules. So that's the convenience of our website, and especially those reflection tools I was talking about earlier too, right? Those PDFs that have summaries of those topics and those visual aids as well. So it can definitely be applied in an educational context, and with the mentor guide as a resource, it can help kind of even drive the conversation further as well when you're talking about this with your youth. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in or add anything to that.
Yeah, I was just going to speak in terms of I guess from my context. So I grew up in British Columbia, and we have this curriculum called Planning 10, which helps you with creating your 5-10-year plan and how to keep a budget. So when we were creating the course, I was in like the BC context, I was definitely thinking like, okay, this could fit into a planning 10 type of course where, you know, it's within the like 90-minute frame. It can be completed within one course or within like one class period, depending on the layout. And then, yeah, with like the different activities, implementing that into a school environment, I think would really enhance the course and make it more collaborative.
I was just going to add, like, so in an Ontario context, like we also have like, you know, physical education in grade 9. Usually that's where you have your phys ed class. And usually there is a unit talking about, you know, substance use and mental health and physical health. And you can definitely use these modules and some of those videos and resources in that type of context. And I was also thinking, because we also have the history module, if there's any like history classes where folks want to talk about the politics, the process of the Cannabis Act in Canada, there's also that option as well. So you can definitely do the course as a whole and also just pick and choose based off the modules.
I have a question for Dr. Yer, and this is based on other received through cannabis concerns like friends, peers, or parents. I guess like if you're witnessing a peer or loved one going through what you think is an episode of psychosis, what would be the next steps? Like, I know it can be different for everyone, but are there certain resources or like how do you go about helping someone that is in distress, I guess is a question for you. That might be a loaded one, but it's one that we do receive a lot.
So sorry, my internet, I think I missed the beginning. Can you just repeat the beginning part for me?
Yeah, I was saying that we receive questions through Cannabis and Psychosis, usually from like concerned parents or guardians, when they have a loved one going through what they think is an episode of psychosis, in early stages of adolescence. What would you recommend, or how would you go about helping that person in a way that I don't know, I guess like non-stigmatizing, and I know it is different for everyone, but.
It's a really great question. Often when somebody is, actively psychotic or experience a psychotic episode, they may not have the insight to know that they are experiencing an episode. And we don't want to tell somebody that what they're experiencing isn't real, right? If somebody has a delusional belief system that may not be grounded in reality, we don't want to tell them that what they're experiencing isn't real. That will create probably barriers and have them not want to engage with us. As a loved one, what we can say is, and what I often say as a clinician, I don't pretend to know what's real and not real. I don't know, there's different realms that I might not have access to, and I don't know the answers. I do know that what you're experiencing is your reality, and I see that it's distressing for you. And focusing on the distress of it rather than if it's real or not real can be a nice way to engage in a conversation that's not judgmental and that's open and compassionate and curious. And so asking somebody if they'd be open to speaking to somebody about that distress, whether it be the family doctor, mental health clinician, getting kind of alongside someone to express that you're concerned with the amount of distress that they're experiencing and wondering if they might be open to talking to a mental health practitioner about that distress.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it, is not adding more distress on top of everything that they're already experiencing.
Yeah, and not, you're sick or you're experiencing psychosis or you're hearing things or seeing things, and certainly words we don't want to invalidate or dismiss somebody's experience. Their experience is very real to them, but there's support for the distress associated with that experience.
Thank you so much. And I see that someone's, oh, sorry, did someone else want to speak?
You got it, Kia, thank you.
Okay, I see that someone's hand is raised. Go forth. We'd love to hear your question.
Oh, thank you. I've put in the Q&A. I've just put it in Q&A, but my question was, yes, because the resources you share with us today are so amazing and clearly useful. A question that came to my mind was, is there, or do you know of any type of the same resources available for other drugs or alcohol? I don't know if it's in the topic, but I in my work with youth, or I encounter many kinds of substance abuse, not just cannabis. So I'm thinking that it can definitely be useful to talk about cannabis, but I'm also thinking or wishing, like, is there that kind of resources with alcohol that is also legal, or other drugs that are illegal?
I'll speak briefly to this, but then I'll open it up to the rest of the people on the team. Poly, like, I guess in terms of other substances, like polysubstance use is something that we touch on in the course, just because often when people are consuming cannabis products, they're not consuming it alone. Like, they might be consuming alcohol, mushrooms, like, it's up to the individual. So polysubstance use is like definitely something that we touch on in the course. But in terms of other substances, especially beyond cannabis and alcohol, in terms of education that are like funded by like Health Canada, I'm not too sure, especially when we're dealing with underage individuals or just young people in general. I'm not too aware of resources, but maybe other people on the team are. I know that there's another round of funding and people are wanting to, you know, go into more education around opiates and the overdose crisis, but maybe some folks on the team know about other programs, especially with alcohol. I'll leave it open.
Perhaps we can get back to you with that and send you a bunch of resources that we will have researched better. I hope that is acceptable to you. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime directly. I've put our email in there. Thank you so much. Oh. Getting the technical things together. Please feel free to reach out and we will send you those. I didn't know if, and not trying to put anyone on the spot, Dr. Herman or perhaps Julia would have any immediate sort of ideas as to how they could find some additional resources.
No, there, to my awareness, there are not resources as good as this, certainly targeting other substances, exploring other substances. I can send a list of resources that I do share with clients and with parents and loved ones, but I've never seen anything as like this. I think this is quite new, and yeah, but happy to share resources that I have. I can send that through.
Thank you very much, and we'll put something together for you. Thank you very much for your question.
And someone wrote, how would we support your team in obtaining more opportunities to create additional resources like this? Is there a way to provide feedback about the resource to funders for the project? So that is a great comment. Definitely, like, we're encouraging folks to share this resource with teachers, with young people, really anyone in your networks. I think substance use, education and health, whether or not you are the one consuming the substance, is just really important to share and talk about. We really focus on reducing stigma and coming from a place of, acceptance and understanding. And I think a part of that is educating ourselves on these emerging topics like substance use health. We do have a survey that folks can fill out that will link in the chat at the end of the webinar. It's a survey that can be found on both the Cannabis and Mental Health Project website, as well as the Cannabis and Psychosis site. So there you can provide your feedback about the content and any additional information you'd like to see. But I would also like to add that I know there's other cannabis education projects that, including ourselves, that are wanting to continue and to keep spreading the word and to keep engaging young folks across the country, and then potentially providing education on other substances as well. I think it is an emerging topic and it can be quite taboo, but I think in the years to come that folks will see the necessity in talking about substance use health coming from a neutral place and a place of compassion. So hopefully there's more resources like this that will emerge. I guess just a general question to the young folks on the team. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'd like to hear what your experience has been like working on the project, and I guess main takeaways or things that you've enjoyed while engaging with the Cannabis and Mental Health Project. Maybe things you've learned, things you've added, or contributed to.
I can tell you it has been fantastic to work with all the Youth Action Committee members and Kia as well. We've managed to maintain this team for 3 years, which is no small feat. We've gotten to know each other well, and there's a lot of love there. These people have done amazing work. The Youth Action Committee not only participated in the creation of all of the content and its focus, they also made their own videos and assisted in doing all the designs. We spent quite a bit of time researching, Kia and I specifically, but all the other Youth Action Committee members as well, researching what kind of design resonated with youth across Canada. And it has been an absolute pleasure to work with everyone. So thank you again to everyone, and thank you to Dr. Herman and to Katerina and to Dr. Phil Thibault for helping us out here. It's really been a pleasure. I also wanted to share the fact that we do have a PDF summary of some of the key resources and some of our partners' resources that I will share again with you in the chat. I'm not sure, does anyone have any more questions and comments? Kia, is there anything you'd like to add?
I guess, just encouraging folks to check out these resources. Take your time with it. Something we didn't mention that's now coming to me is that the Cannabis and Mental Health course is a certified course. So once young people have finished it, they'll receive a certificate, and they will also receive a LinkedIn badge. So that does kind of incentivize it a little bit, and just adds a little bit of accreditation, which can be really nice, especially when you're a young folk and you're trying to make sense of the world. It's nice to just have those little things. So you do get a certificate at the end of the course as well. But really encourage folks just to take their time, and we'd also love to hear your feedback. So if you can visit our website, take the survey. We're open to new ideas constantly. And also, if any of the other youth on the team want to say anything, but no pressure at all, we've also provided our contact information. So if you'd like any feedback from young folks or Dr. Urissa or Dr. Phil Thibault, we encourage those as well. Thank you all for coming. The PDF is coming, I believe.
here, sorry, I realized I was sharing stuff with just the panelists. Thank you very much, Katerina, for letting me know that. So there is a direct link to the survey, which is in French and English. You will also receive, or potentially receive, you have an opportunity to receive a $10 Amazon gift card. So please, it would be wonderful to hear what you have to say. And if you have any questions, again, you can put them either in the survey or you can reach out directly to us. I hope that I have included everything. If you have any questions, again, reach out anytime. And thank you all so much for being here. Thank you very much to the presenters, the interpreters, and the translators as well for doing such a fabulous job. And thank you very much to the MHCC for hosting such a wonderful webinar.
Thank you.
Any last points?
That's it for me. Yeah, just thank you all for being here, and thank you to all of our partners. It's been a really fun project. Really, a lot of people's efforts have been put into this, and we've met so many people along the way. So it's been really amazing. So thank you to Katarina, Dr. Durissa Herman, Melisha, Connor, Hargan, Julia, Ishani, and to all the folks at America Interpretation. It really means a lot.